Welcome to Motors and Medicine. On today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the effects of lectins and how they pertain to your diet, where they come from, what they are, the effects they can have, and how they can disrupt a number of things in your body and ultimately lead to unwanted weight gain. So let's start at the beginning. What is a lectin? A lot of people have some people have heard of this term as of late, perhaps not. I'll just give you a brief history. Lectin is a protein structured molecule that's found in a number of foods that we consume in our diet. From beans to potatoes to peanuts to tomatoes to a number of foods, bananas. Now, here's the thing with lectins. Some lectins, some of these protein structures are actually okay for the body. However, most lectins are not. And so there are actually a number of lectins found in different foods that I'll go over. But the big problem with lectins is they can lead to a series of serious health conditions. First, at the top, they can make your red blood cells kind of clump together more than they should be, leading to some clotting issues. They can cause autoimmune reactions. So some people who suffer from autoimmune disorders, there's a possibility that there is a link between their diet, lectin amounts, and the autoimmune disorders being triggered. They can also cause major inflammatory reactions in the body because lectins are inflammatory, and they basically cause things like unwanted digestive side effects, bloating, gas, diarrhea, and they disrupt the microbiome in your gut. And I've discussed the microbiome and the importance of the microbiome in a previous video as it pertained to the relationship between microbiome, your natural gut flora or gut bacteria, and antibiotic use. Now, I'm actually going to make a comparison with lectins. Now, a lot of people are just not aware of these lectins, and they're found in just about any food that you eat. But I'm going to list several foods that are like the top offenders, we'll say. Now, keep in mind, these lectins will cause most of their issues or problems if the food is consumed raw. Now, most of the foods that we eat are not, but there are several that are. So first, I'm going to make a list of a few foods that we really want to avoid eating raw. Things like certain types of beans, kidney beans being the number one offender. Potatoes, tomatoes, soybeans, whole grains, dark wheat, things that we traditionally associate with being healthy can actually be detrimental to your body over time. And this is something that researchers have found as of late, and they're starting to realize that there's a direct relationship between these foods and inflammatory conditions. The biggest problem with a lot of the American diet and a lot of health conditions in general is that we're triggering an inflammatory effect in the body that is just not welcome. Anytime you trigger an inflammatory reaction in the body kind of goes into different modes, and it creates a lot of issues from cortisol levels to shift, which can of course make you retain water and retain weight and salt. And there's just a number of biochemical things that are changing when we have inflammatory triggers going on in the body. And the one thing that is a common denominator, we all have to eat. So unfortunately, if we're picking the wrong foods, even if we think they're healthy foods can in fact be causing us some harm that we're not aware of. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the autoimmune disorders, like lupus, for example, can in some way be linked to the foods that you eat. So here's what we're going to go over. The biggest thing that I'm trying to get across, the biggest point here is these lectins, for the most part, are just things that we want to try to avoid as much as possible. Now, it's impossible because lectins are found in a lot of the foods we eat, and I mean a lot. But if we can try to pick and choose certain foods, eat less of certain foods, and then perhaps watch the types of foods that we're eating raw versus cooked. Because once you cook certain foods, that lectin, because it's a protein, the protein itself under heat will denature and change its shape and will no longer have that same inflammatory effect on the body. So I'm gonna talk about the top three. The first one is tomatoes. Now, everybody looks at a tomato and says, oh, tomatoes are super healthy, they're fantastic, but tomatoes are loaded with lectin, and the lectins especially that cause inflammation in the body, that disrupt the microbiome in your gut, that affect your digestion, and ultimately lead to unwanted weight gain that you just weren't aware of. So if you eat a lot of raw tomatoes, that's a habit you may want to break. And you may want to switch to just eating tomatoes that have been prepared in a cooked form or steamed form, like steamed tomatoes that you find in pasta sauces or spaghetti sauce, no problem. That is something that's not going to cause issues. But raw tomatoes, they do in fact have a lot of lectin and can cause some issues that are unwanted. The second food I'm going to talk about is peanuts. Now, a lot of people like peanuts, and they're found in the raw form in many different foods, snacks, treats, candies, you name it. And unfortunately, peanuts are ultra high in unwanted lectins that also cause inflammation and will cause unwanted digestive issues, disrupt the microbiome, cause bloating, gas, constipation, and ultimately unwanted weight gain. So if you eat a lot of raw peanuts, or if you're eating a Snickers bar that's got a lot of peanuts in it, or Payday, or anything that has peanuts in it that they're raw, there's a problem. Now, roasted peanuts, there's a question how much the proteins have denatured in roasted peanuts, but overall peanuts in general just have a lot of lectin, so that is something that you want to avoid. Now, interestingly, peanut butter spread doesn't really have that same effect, but peanuts that are raw do. So that's another food to try to avoid. And the third I wanted to talk about was whole grains or dark grains. Now, that's something that's very counterintuitive. Most of the time we associate whole grains or dark grains with being like extremely healthy. Unfortunately, these foods these grains, these whole grains, contain a lot of lectin. And again, lectin is not something that we want to be taking in large quantities into our bodies because of the side effects. And dark and whole grains are huge offenders here. And people tend to eat these grains, these whole grains and dark grains raw. I mean, you're not really cooking them, right? So that is something to consider there as well. So tomatoes, peanuts, whole grains, raw grains, dark grains, I should say. These are things that are probably the biggest three offenders in the American diet. We really need to try to mitigate any of these potential side effects from the lectins by not consuming so many lectins in general and so many of these foods in the raw form. I can't say enough how many people are just unaware that, by eating a lot of raw tomato or peanuts or whole grains, and there's several other foods like bananas, for example, also have high levels of lectin and high levels of sugar. I recently made a change a couple years ago in my diet. I stopped eating tomatoes. I stopped eating bananas. I don't eat peanuts, and I don't eat whole dark grains anymore. And lo and behold, I was able to lose even more weight than I had already lost. I had made a lifestyle change not too long ago where I lost about 20 pounds, and I was able to drop another 5 pounds just by not eating those particular foods because I ate them on a regular basis. And it really surprised me how much better I felt, how much better my intestines were working and my guts were feeling, and how much more regular I felt. Believe it or not, there are people who suffer from just standard, obnoxious irregularity in their gut. And they just have no idea that it could be because of their diet and the amount of lectin that you're getting. So I actually want to implore you guys to kind of do some research, find out about lectin-free diets and how you can try to avoid the effects of these lectins. not every food that we associate with being healthy is actually healthy for us. So, I just wanted to bring you guys I wanted to bring to attention and to light this information because I think it's important to know. And especially if you're a person that either has struggled with weight or struggled with like digestive issues, inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, for example, it's another condition that's brought on by these lectins. And it contributes to these conditions. Now, I'm not saying that these conditions are solely to blame on lectins, but they're a big contributor. So if we can make adjustments, every adjustment that we make to our diet and our lifestyles, we can prolong our lives and make things a lot better, and we'll live happier, more comfortable lives in the long run. So I hope that this information was beneficial. And like always, please like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button. Let your friends know if you like this content. Hopefully that I'm spreading a good word here, and I appreciate the support. Until next time, this is Motors and Medicine signing off. On the next episode, we'll get back into the cars, and hopefully I can bring you some good content there. All right, you guys have a good day. Thanks.